A few weeks ago, I was scrolling YouTube looking for something to listen to on my morning walk, and I came across a video of a young man walking through the snow, talking to the camera. Within the first few moments, I was hooked. He was saying something I'd spent years trying to articulate in my own practice, that people pour thousands of hours and thousands of dollars into supplements, protocols, and medical therapies, chasing the one thing that will finally make them feel whole, when in reality, true healing is found by returning to something much simpler, simplicity itself and adherence to natural law. That hit me because it's exactly what I discovered when I made the leap from emergency medicine to integrative health. Early in my career, I did what I was trained to do. I put people on medications. I referred them to surgery. I intervened, forced healing. And then slowly through my own life and my integrative studies, I started seeing a bigger picture, much more complete picture. True healing isn't something a doctor does to a patient. It's something the patient allows. And it's not purely physical. There is a mental and spiritual dimension to healing that isn't just important. It may be the most important part of all. Liev had a phrase that stopped me cold when I heard it first. The body cannot heal through force. The body must be allowed to heal. Simple, obvious, and yet almost everything in modern medicine and even modern wellness does just the opposite. Liev Dalton discovered the same truth by a completely different path. He walked away from a biochemistry degree and a future in dentistry. He walked away from a successful therapy practice because both systems kept hitting the same ceiling, treating the symptom, missing the person. His platform, Beyond Terrain, is built on one core belief, that health is our natural state and that the path back to it isn't more intervention, it's less noise, more nature, and a return to who we actually are. I think you're really going to love this conversation. Welcome, Liev. Welcome, Liev, to the Wealthy Life podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. So a little backstory. I literally just randomly messaged him on Instagram. I'm like, hey, will you be on my podcast? Because I watched a couple of his shorts on YouTube and I was like, this guy is amazing. I want to hear everything he has to say. So thank you so much for being willing to be on my show today. I appreciate it.
Of course. No, I love talking about these topics. So thank you. The pleasure's mine.
Well, and the part I love the most about it is that you're always walking in the snow. I'm sure in
the
summer.
Well, it's winter time.
Right. So like you're always like walking through the snow and just talking, and it's beautiful and super inspiring. So let's just get into it right away and tell me about yourself and Beyond Terrain.
Sure. Yeah. Well, great starting point. I mean, I started Beyond Terrain 2.5 years ago. I started really in the conventional world. Like I studied biochemistry and molecular biology in my undergrad. And it was funny because I, was like totally on the other side of everything that I think now. And so I think my open-mindedness really served me well because I just remained open to my opinion changing, which served me best. Like I don't have all the answers then, I don't even have them now, but I'm open to always learning more and willing to change, so that's really what served me and Beyond Terrain well, because Beyond Terrain is constantly evolving and shifting and trying to become more coherent with natural law, with nature, with some sort of truth at the end of the day is what I'm kind of pursuing. So I did a master's of counseling psychology. I opened up a therapy practice, wilderness therapy, EMDR, and got out of that field as well. These fields just didn't serve me. They didn't serve my highest being, my highest good, which is what I do with Beyond Terrain. I have no dog in this fight. There's no dogma about me. I really am open, and I think there's a time and place for everything. But I think the closer we get to adhering with the fundamental principles of nature, the closer we get with Creator, having faith in some sort of meaning and purpose, even in our body's innate ability to heal, we get closer to this state of health, peace, and bliss that we're all really searching for at the root, right? Like we all want to feel better, and so there's something more to life than just chasing health, right? Like health is our default states within us. We want to find it and then align ourselves with something good, something purposeful. So Beyond Terrain is really, the centers around sort of the terrain theory, terrain paradigm is what I would call it. And I put beyond in front of it just to ensure that I wasn't held in by anything, that we can take it anywhere we need to go. And so it's just continuously moving, continuously evolving. And that's what I'm all about. And again, that adheres to one of these fundamental principles of nature is constant adaptation, flow. Whatever needs to happen will happen. We can think that it's good or bad, but that's just our own moral judgment, right? So yeah, taking a step back. I hope that's a good starting point.
That was an excellent starting point. So I think the first thing I heard you say in one of your videos was like how if you're someone who's struggling and you've tried all these modes of therapy, the EMDR, the brain spotting, the somatic work, and you still feel stuck, I can't remember exactly what you said, but it's like you have to pivot. You have to look at it differently and stop identifying with your traumas and look at it a different way. What would that different way be in your words?
Yeah. And I think this was something that I was sort of stuck in for a while. So I really thought at one point, I was like, trauma is the root cause of all disease, even maybe physical
Yes.
diseases. I really went down that road. And then for myself, like I'm blessed, and I was blessed growing up and to have family and community around me. And everyone goes through their hardship in life. But in studying, like I studied EMDR, I studied somatic experiencing, I studied mindfulness meditation, all of these different modalities. I'm quite familiar with the whole nervous system regulation. I'm familiar with all this stuff. I studied it all, and I did it with clients, and I did it with myself. What it did was it took things that I shouldn't have focused my intention on and blew it up to make it seem like really big in my life. And the more I focused on sort of all of the things that were wrong in my life and the traumas, the things that I perceived as negative, like that was the perception that was keeping me stuck. And I was doing the work, and there was always something else to be processed. Maybe I don't even remember it, and I have to
One more
process it.
layer.
Like, it's always something else, and then you get stuck in the healing phase, and nothing ever gets resolved. Like you never achieve that state of healing, or that state of healed or bliss or peace, that we're trying to foster in ourselves and find. And that's not a scarce emotion or state. It's not scarce. There's an infinite source of it within us. And so realizing these things, like shifting my story, my narrative, and even my perspective about my experiences, and not viewing them as negative, but viewing them as serving to my highest being, my highest good. Like I wouldn't be who I am without all of the negative, quote unquote, or unfamiliar, uncomfortable things that happen to me. I wouldn't be where I am, who I am without that. And so that's really the purpose, is the perspective shift. It's the shifting
So
kind of.
how did you, like, what was the pivot for you? How did you all of a sudden look at your life and say, I need to stop focusing on this trauma and these stories that I've made up in my mind and look at it differently? And how did you do that?
So it's funny, like I don't negate sort of the physical world. Like I think you can focus too much on metaphysics, and sometimes you can ignore metaphysics and focus too much on physics. I don't ignore the external world, right? And so everyone's always like, oh, it's all internal, but the external world can give us valuable information. So interestingly enough, like, because I publish some controversial content on Beyond Train, and when I was a regulated therapist, people would start to send complaints to my regulatory colleagues, not clients. Like I had really positive relationships with clients and really did some really good work. It was just people who would stumble upon my page who didn't like what I was saying, and then would find, my my other work, and would complain. And then, so I was going through this big process of like, they were trying to reprimand me in some way, and they couldn't really take my license because it was gray and the code of ethics and all these blah, blah, blah. And this was a big struggle for me because obviously I had centered my entire business around this. I have a 6-month-old daughter, so my wife was about 4 or 5 months pregnant when this started. It was dragging on. It was making me feel, again, like I wasn't good enough, which was my theme of trauma that I was stuck in. And I was like stuck in that loop and stuck in this, like, I'm a victim, and I'm a whatever to this. And it's all just adhering to my trauma. And so one day I thought, I don't need to go through this. Like I'm consenting to the suffering in my life right now. Like obviously I didn't consent to those people, doing the complaints and causing the trouble, whatever, but I was consenting to the suffering, and it was a scary leap, but I had to say, that's enough. I'm done. I'm out. I relinquished my license. I relinquished my connection with the college and the therapy and whatever. I let it go. It was funny because that was the week that, Beyond Train just started taking off from a, business perspective. But then that following week, I also woke up and was like, I also am causing my suffering by continuously focusing on the trauma and that I'm not good enough narrative that I kept telling myself, that everything came back to every mistake that I made. It's like, oh, you're not good enough. And it blew up. And and then I was suffering because of it. I still consented to that story. And so it's quite literally the decision to let go of that old narrative that's keeping you stuck. And you don't have to know necessarily how it's going to happen, like, because it's still a work in progress. Like, there's always, there's always a journey ahead. We don't want the journey to stop, but to approach it with clarity and flow and adaptability is how I move forward now, rather than having these ideas stuck in the past. So it was literally that decision, and I don't know what the future is going to hold. And there's a piece that I feel with that now, where I was very uncomfortable before. It's like, I don't know what's going to happen. Now I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. Right? So that's the shift.
Right.
Those are the shifts that we have to make, right? It's that perspective. So anyways, I hope that's clear.
It is. So because you basically took this situation where you had people reporting you and you had invested money and time into a career. And instead of looking at it, I think you just described it, you didn't look at it as a crisis, you looked at it as a gift.
Exactly.
Which is completely just mindset. It's completely mindset.
Mm-hmm. It's our perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's perspective you carry with it. I mean, listen, there's the difference between, because don't take my life as an example. Like that's fine. I know that I'm very blessed and very fortunate. But the people in history who've accomplished the greatest good have been through the hardest challenges, the hardest lives. Like, and this is written in story, written in religion. I mean, look at the story of Jesus Christ, right? Like, these stories are innate within all spirituality, and even, the literature, right? Like, there's a great Carl Jung quote. It says, it's said that no tree can stretch its branches to heaven without reaching its roots down to hell, right?
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
It's the perspective that we carry on walking through hell that allows us to go and reach our branches to heaven, right? Either we get stuck in hell because we never want to walk out of it, or we walk out of it and we look, well, thank God that happened, and then you move forward, right? Like, that's the difference. It's like people go through hardship. Hardship's always been around. But the people who create good, and this is the alchemical transmutation, right? Lead into gold. But at some point you have to go through the discomfort, and you have to go through the unknown and kind of become comfortable with that to then move forward, right? That's the only way to turn lead into gold. Right? There's that dark night of the soul.
How do you help? So you work with clients, I'm assuming, through your Beyond Train website and platform. How does that look? What does that look like?
So again, I offer sort of different, it's whatever people need, right? I offer sort of really asynchronous stuff where I try to teach fundamental principles, and then I have, the one-to-one education. And so I spend a lot of time studying what makes a good practitioner, right? What makes a good doctor? No, I'm not a doctor, right? But what makes a good doctor? First of all, we think of, what does doctor mean, right? What does the word doctor mean? What's the etymology of the word? And it's to teach. So that's the first principle. We always think that, first of all, the doctor has to heal us, right? A practitioner has to heal us, but we also must take that out of the equation. So I walk alongside people. It's more of a partnership than anything. And it's based in sort of this education in a way. Now, education isn't necessarily learning more. Sometimes it's unlearning nonsense. So we can shift our perspectives on the way we see the world. Like, people get stuck in gene theory, that their genes depict everything about their health and life is already written biologically in their genes. Now this can be empirically falsified, which is quite an interesting discussion to have, can be quite in depth. But if we break down that story of like, oh, I'm sick because of my gene, and we break down that victim consciousness, that's primarily a big part of the work. It's like, where are we still a victim, and breaking that down? So unlearning the victim consciousness is part of that education. What I really try to foster is understanding, right? It's like an epiphany. Because they did a study actually on people who went through therapy, and like people would go through 30, 40, 50 hours of therapy. And so then after, it was a qualitative study, they asked the individuals, they said, when did you find the benefit from therapy? Like when did you feel like you were getting the good from it, the benefit, right? Like the positive. And on average, people said that there were about 2 to 3 moments of about 5 seconds within the 40 to 50 hours of therapy that they experienced where all of the change, all of the benefit was derived from. So at 50 hours, about 10 to 15 seconds is where people felt like this epiphany, this understanding, this perspective shift, this narrative shift. And so that's really what I try to target and then bring out, I mean, as soon as possible, right? So I've worked with some people where, you sign on for like a container. That's usually the best way. Like if you're going to commit to me, I'm going to commit to you so we can have a proper energy exchange. I've had some people sign on. We've done 3 sessions. They feel great. Life's great. They move on, and listen, I'm still here. I don't go anywhere, but some people it takes, 5, 6, 7, 8 sessions. It's no big deal. It's whatever people need, right? Like we get held in, again, like the way I approach my business, it's very much based in natural law and adaptability and flow. So I show up for people in front of me. It's all about attunement. There's no one size fits. I don't have Liev's protocol. I have, if I work with you, it's Lynn's protocol, right? It's Lynn's roadmap. Where you're at and your North Star is where we need to orient ourselves. I can't interject. I can only walk alongside you for a moment. So that's really philosophically part of the approach. It is fostering those moments of deep understanding, living that with faith and conviction. So oftentimes that requires a breakdown of these stories that keep us stuck in like a victim consciousness. So there's obviously many ways we could go about that, but that's generally the approach.
How do you handle that client who is so stuck in that victim consciousness that they can't even scratch the surface of seeing things differently? Because there's a lot of people like that, and they're chronically ill, they're chronically fatigued, they're in pain, they're depressed. And how do you start scratching the surface of that?
The thing is that at the end of the day, the healing is always from within. Like I try to screen individuals for that exactly. Because it doesn't matter what situation you're in. What I want to know is, are you willing, like, do you want truly to change? Because some people not
Right.
but some people are more comfortable in their suffering than they are in the idea of the unknown of what it looks like to be healed. It's like once we take our identity and glue it to a diagnosis, right? Severing that is truly only a decision that can come from within. And so that's where I generally will say, okay, well, I'll send them information. Like I'll send them the asynchronous stuff. It's possible to begin engaging in that work, but it's not the biggest focus of mine at this moment because I want to work with people at this higher level because I put a lot of time and energy into it. I want people to really feel value in that. And so I try to, I guess that's part of the structure of trying to foster change in the world. I try to instill this information of that first step that it's possible to heal. Like we need faith in that first. Like if you don't believe that you can heal, there's no sense in doing the work. You can't really do the work. The work is essentially getting to that point of having faith in your body. So again, that's like meeting people where they're at, and so generally the work that I present doesn't really resonate with that individual. So I don't really engage at the high level at this moment in that. And I try to foster that sort of at the low level in my Instagram videos, in my YouTube videos,
Yes.
and foster just this sense of empowerment that like you can heal. Because I have people DM me and comment all the time where I can't heal from this condition. And it's like, okay, like I have a saying I say at the end of my podcast, and it's not my saying, but I heard it once, and it was, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you are correct.
You're correct. Right.
Right? Like that's so fundamentally true. And so that's extremely true when it comes to doing this type of work, right? You have to at least be aligned with the idea, with the concept, have faith in the concept that you can be better in some capacity. Listen, if you chop your leg off, you're not going to grow your leg back. Maybe you can, I don't know. But
I've
there's
never seen
likely
it.
limitations. But it's like, how do we create the most amount of good and positivity and foster that inner sense of happiness no matter the situation that we're in? That's how we improve our lives to the greatest, highest degree, aligning ourselves with the highest amount of good that we can conceive of, that North Star. Like, this is how we create meaning in any situation we find ourselves in, right? So yeah, it's kind of a tough question, but I think at the end of the day, what I've noticed, because when I work more in the public world, like when I worked, I did my practicum and I worked for free, I encountered a lot of people who like just didn't really, like, they didn't want to change. And we would spend hours going in circles and circles. And no matter what, it was like, it had to kind of come from within. It had to be that decision of like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done with, you don't have to know the answers, but you at least have to make the decision of aligning yourself with something greater.
Right. And actually, that's one thing. One thing you said is all disease is a distance from the creator. So that's something that most practitioners wouldn't say out loud. But I see a lot of truth in it. I think all might be a little strong, but what do you mean by that, and why does it matter?
Sure. Okay, yes. And so we could spend a lot of time on this. And I have spent a lot of time thinking about it and ensuring that I believe it to be fundamentally true for all disease. And so why I say this way is, first of all, when we're distant from God, from the creator, we are distant from creation, right? And when we move away from eating our natural, whole, local diet, disease comes. This is ultimately because we moved away from the creator in some capacity, right? So our habits stray from what is known to the human existence when we start to think that we're God and think that we have more control over the world than, we don't surrender, right? So I guess part of this premise lies in the concept that primitive man did not succumb to our modern diseases in any capacity. Like all anthropological literature shows that any sort of dental deformation, I mean, Weston A. Price did a lot of work there, even tuberculosis, so-called infectious diseases, any sort of birth defects, those did not occur. Obviously, the diabetes, the cancers, the allegedly autoimmune conditions, none of that occurred in primitive man pre-civilization. It was only after we introduced modernity. This all anthropological literature across the board shows this to be true. Once we stray from natural order, we lose our physical health most often. Now, is the answer, cabin in the woods or whatever? I don't go there. Although it's easier to live in coherence with natural rhythm when you don't have the option of modernity. Like, it's always easier to go to the store than it is to actually connect with your food source.
Right.
So that's sort of where it comes from, is like, when we connect with the creator and thus creation, we're closest with whole natural foods, natural movement practices, even something as simple as sitting on the ground. I'm sitting on the ground right now.
Right.
Chairs don't exist in nature, right? So we're supposed to be back chain dominant. We're not supposed to be constantly in the front chain and in this, laid back position and looking down at our phones. We're meant to be up and engaged. And when we sit on the floor, this is a very engaged way of sitting. It took me a very long time to be able to sit on the ground for more than 2 minutes. I had to actually retrain my body to get back to that point. But when we study primitive man, we notice patterns, right? So when there's no chair, you don't have to worry about training your body. They can get up, they can sprint, chase down an animal, and then prepare it for dinner, all in, the matter of a moment. So this is the living in coherence and rhythm that, again, the answer is not to live like primitive people. Like, we're on this journey for a reason. Like, we have modernity for a reason, but it's about transmuting modernity from lead into gold, right? About the culmination of the fields, which is what the terrain paradigm is about. It's like, how can we break down the spells put forth in sort of modern science that disempower us, bring it back to something that's true and coherent with reality and nature, synthesize it all together and put forth something that's more meaningful and empowering, that allows us to truly achieve a state of health and well-being from the mental, spiritual, physical perspective. And I do believe that this ultimately comes down to faith in something bigger than just our ego, ourself.
Right.
It's necessary because we have to zoom out. We cannot just look down the test tube, down the microscope. We have to zoom out and look at the whole. That also comes from these fundamental principles that nature teaches us, that the Creator teaches us.
Yeah, and I think you brought up Weston Price, and that it's such a perfect example of what modern life has done to us. When we used to chew meat and fibrous things, and our mouths were bigger and our jaws were stronger, and no one had sleep apnea, and no one had all these sinus issues. And now you have people with recessed chins and all of these issues. You can see it in so many levels. What I struggle with a lot, though, is I think about this all the time because I live a modern life. I work in an office. I'm on my computer a lot, as I'm sure you are as well. So it's constantly trying to pivot and be like, okay, where can I add natural living into my life? When obviously you can do that with food, you can do it with natural movement, but it's hard. And I see a lot of modern medicine as being the antidote for that modern living. So it is very necessary because so many of us live modern lives. So a lot of the medicines we use and even the supplements, I know you've talked about supplements a little bit, they do help. They help kind of like offset the dysfunction and imbalances that happen because of the way we live. I'm not saying it's ideal, but sometimes it's the only way to work around it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. It's like, how can we, because again, I don't like to, like, my point here is not to instill any fear. Like, if you don't sit on the floor, you're going to be diseased, right? Like, that's not the point of this discussion. Right. Or like, if you take a supplement, you're going to be sick. I would even go as far as say, like, you probably can get away with taking some pharmaceutical drugs and be fine, because we all have someone in our life who lives to be 95 years old in perfect health and didn't eat the ideal diet and didn't, like, still took some pharma here and there. They didn't really live natural, didn't really care about their health, still lived 95. Moved her. I think of my wife's grandmother. She was such a beautiful woman and had a big family, 7 children. And, I think she almost had 40 grandchildren when it was her time. And, was close to family, to God, had strong faith. And like, listen, when she was in her early 20s, she had 4 boys and her husband dropped dead. And, she had a business. She had to take care of 4 boys, and this was in rural PEI, She was able to transmute that, someone else came along and got married and adopted the 4 boys and had three girls and, lived to 94. Again, the day that she passed, she woke up in the morning, she put her makeup on, her earrings on, made her bed, got up, and it was like she knew it was time. Like, she knew it was her time. She had such a great relationship with God. I'm sure she told him, like, all right, here, it's time, take me out right now, because she called every single one of her children in the days prior to passing as well. I mean, it was like the perfect time. So how can you live with such coherence and rhythm without worrying so much about your health constantly? So these are the things that I'm like, that's not unique to her. Like, we can all tap into that. So, like, taking a step back, this is what I say when I say, let's live with natural law and rhythm and coherence. That's what I mean when we have strong conviction with faith, with family, community, with doing something for just, like, not being selfish, not being greedy and gluttonous and lustful. And like, those are the really important principles that we can embody. That, I think, is more important than, again, I don't negate the physical. I don't negate that at all. But this always keeps me tied to that idea of, like, there's something more than just
so much more
our ego or our physical body, right? Like, it's like how we all have stories. Everybody that I talk to knows someone like that who was able to live a long, healthy life and smoked or drank or whatever. Like, she
drank Coke every day,
glass of wine. Yep. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? We all have a story like that. So it's not to instill fear, but I think that, again, we lower the barriers. Like, when I sit on the floor, my hips are open and my gait is continuously getting better. And I have to reverse a lot of playing hockey, which is not very good for our natural movement pattern.
Right.
But when I sit on the floor, like, I don't do hip opening exercises anymore. And my hips are more mobile than ever. I can get up and down on the floor like pain-free. I can sit here for like 8 hours and play on the floor with my daughter. And I mean, this is like, it lowers the resistance, it lowers the barriers. Like, when you're out walking in nature, I do all of my videos in nature because I don't have to think before I speak. I stopped writing notes. I just give myself a topic and I allow things to come through me and to flow through me. I lower the resistance, and I'm able to get into that flow state of peace and rhythm, right? That I'm kind of alluding to here now. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's incredible. I think there's so many ways I could go with this right now, but
I know.
like in the health world, in the health industry, in the wellness industry right now, which is blowing up almost to an annoying level, people are they're pushing so hard. So you talk a lot about force versus allowing. And I think whether you're using traditional medicine or using wellness practices or biohacking, people are pushing, stressing themselves out, rigid. And it's like totally the opposite outcome. So talk to me about the force versus allowing.
Yeah, it's funny, in the academy we're talking recently about the COVID jab, and everyone's always worried about like the spike protein and the mRNA. And so in the terrain camp, we actually kind of take a little bit of a different perspective. Like, the concept of mRNA and spike protein rest on a large number of assumptions and pretty faulty empirical methodologies. So scientifically, we have quite an interesting argument against sort of the even existence of these things as biological entities that can affect us. So the point of that one is to dispel the fear around the jab itself. But then comes the other problem, is when we do succumb to that fear of, we have to detox the jab and the spike protein. We have to detox.
Right.
This is the concept of getting in your own way, right? We think we have to do something about it, so then we stir a bunch of stuff up in our body and take the IV treatments and the this and the that, and the list of things that people do now is endless. A lot of it is very invasive and non-specific. Now, if you're drinking some herbal tea and you're being like, cleanse my body, like, that's not what I'm talking about here.
Right,
But
right.
like if we're doing the really, like, we can do some pretty intense things and even take some pretty intense supplements. Like, this is the concept of getting in your own way, where we're trying to force the body to heal, maybe when the body doesn't even need to heal. Like, so if for, like, humor me, the listener, if the spike protein doesn't exist, right, the jab's still toxic, there's no doubt about it. But my primary perspective on it would rather be than detox, would be to focus on rejuvenation, on replenishment, on nourishment, and supporting the body's innate ability to achieve homeostasis, right? Like, that's what I tend to focus on rather than doing the detox protocols. Because even something like an enema, time and a place for everything. Again, I started the conversation with that. But if we're doing an enema every month, or a parasite cleanse every single month with the full moon, right? Like, that soul twist kind of natural. It's like natural.
Right.
It's not. Primitive people
No.
never did that, first of
No.
all. But again, we're doing things that are non-specifically wiping out our gut, depleting us, and we're getting in our own way. Rather, it'd be best if we just focused on cyclical nourishment, or nourishment every day, right? To allow the body to accomplish what it needs to do. The body's the only thing the body does is one, we have to, eat some sort of food, which some people say you don't even have to eat food, but I wouldn't go so far.
I don't agree with that.
So you have to intake food, right? So your body replenishes and builds itself, and the body excretes waste. Like, that's what the body does, is it removes what it doesn't need and it takes in what it needs. And so if we give the body the right inputs, it can do the latter by itself. We don't have to force the detox to happen, right? Time, place for everything. Bee venom therapy is really cool. It introduces a little bit of inflammation to the body, which inflammation is the body healing itself, right? It's not the root cause. It shows up at the site of disease, not as the cause, as the response. No one says inflammation caused a broken finger, right? So there's a time and place to help support the body's innate healing effects. But when you have a fever and you take a cold shower, you suppress. You're trying to force the body into health. When you have a fever and you take a warm bath and you sit under your blankets all bundled up and you sweat it out and you support your body's goal of heating up to probably excrete something, that's supporting, that's allowing the body to complete its cycles, right? To be honest, the best thing, in my opinion, when we get acutely ill is to literally do nothing. Like, just allow the body to complete what it needs to complete. Like, don't go for the oregano oil. Just let it pass. Have some honey. have some tea. This is not getting in our own way, because again, oregano oil, it's saying, oh, it's natural. But you're taking like pounds of oregano, pressing it. It's out of balance. It's too much. It's still an excess. It still does have properties of suppression, some capacity. Time and a place for everything. But like, if you can afford it, just let go, right? Get out of your own way. Allow your body to accomplish what it needs to accomplish. And so in the more chronic stages, it's funny because I'll work with people who've done literally like everything, and they eat a pristine diet, and they still have subtle things going on. Like, they just can't let go. And the change quite literally happens in shifting our perspective on what our body is trying to accomplish. It's trying to accomplish some sort of balance at the end of the day. And so even just that narrative, that perspective shift allows us to break free from staying stuck in those cyclical symptoms. Sometimes stopping the interventions and just allowing the body to go through it for like a month or two, then it finally goes away, right? But when people cleanse every month, their symptoms come back every couple of months. That's the thing that I noticed with this parasites, especially with everything. We suppress, it comes back. We suppress, it comes back. We suppress, it comes back. And then it eventually will develop and store more deeply into the body, because we're not allowing the body to do what it needs to do, to mobilize, neutralize, and excrete, which is the point. That's what the body is designed to do.
Right, right. One thing I notice with myself and my patients is I always call symptoms red flags, because they're not a bad thing. They're just a sign. They're a sign that your body is saying, hey, something is out of balance. It might be that you're not eating the right food. It might be that you're not resting. It might be that you're not getting out in nature. You're not sitting on the floor. I think people look at symptoms as negative, like, oh, it's bad. I have this bad symptom. I have this pain. I have this discomfort. Whereas I think you can reframe it and say, hey, what is my body trying to tell me? What am I doing? What's out of balance? And there's always something out of balance. It doesn't mean you can always fix it necessarily. Sometimes you need some help. But I mean, I really think that that's an important point. The other thing I think I love that you talk a lot about, and I want to expand on this a little bit, is coherence, because, balance, coherence, like being intuitive about what your body needs, I think is really, really critical. So if someone's listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, this is a cool topic, how do I even start to explore this more? What do you feel about someone just learning to be intuitive and listening to what your body needs and listening to your symptoms as signs rather than negative things?
Yeah. One of the biggest things that helped me was spending a lot of time just being in nature, like just observing it, right? Like, no, don't go in with an agenda, or like, I need to go and achieve wisdom or epiphany or heal. Like, we get in our own way when we try to like force these things. But just spending time in nature and observing it, you realize very quickly that there are fundamental principles. And coherence, you mentioned being one of them. So coherence means together, right? I think that's the etymology. And the thing about nature is, like, we try to isolate parts of nature. Like, we're like, oh, this is a tree, and a tree is separate from nature, right? But when you look and observe nature, you realize that that's absolute nonsense, because without the soil, or without the air, or even without the insects or the microbes, there is no tree, right? So we try to isolate these principles in nature. The thing is, like, spending time next to streams, like moving bodies of water, just water in general, you start to see sort of these concepts of flow, right? And you see concepts even of impedance, like when there's a rock in the water, or a tree falls into the water, right? Like, there's going to be a little bit of stagnation behind that area, so we can use some of these analogies. And I was talking the other day to an individual, and he was saying how we were discussing trauma. He was trying to tell me how trauma is the root cause, and I sort of disagreed. I said it's more relationship and different factors. And he was saying, well, trauma is like a rock, like a big stone, like 500-pound boulder in a river, and you just can't move it. It's there. It's like a scar. And I thought, well, that's a really interesting analogy, because what you'll notice in nature is, like, if there's an impedance, the river will just flow around it at some point. It will just achieve some sort of flow around it. It might change the course of
It creates a beautiful
its
pattern.
function. Exactly.
Right.
Right. But the problem, again, the analogy that I used was the real impedance is us in the river trying to remove that 500-pound stone. Like, you're never going to be able to do that. And you're just going to get in the way of the flow of the river and disrupt the bottom and maybe step on a fish or, disrupt some of the vegetation by being in the river trying to remove this stone that you're never going to remove. Like, you can't change the past, right? So maybe it is stones, but it changes. Yeah, maybe it does change who you are. Like, we are our experiences. But again, we only like when we resist the change, that's where the problem comes from. When we resist nature, we resist that flow. So again, if a tree like falls into the river, maybe we can pull that out, right? That is maybe is a possibility, so that we can help it kind of remove itself, and it's not an impedance that's going to be there forever. It's more acute, right? But the problem is if we get in and we start pulling against the stream and we're trying to pull the tree out, and next storm it would have just broke free, right? But we're in there like we're keeping it stuck in there. Like, again, we get in our own way sometimes when we're in the river trying to manipulate things, right? So it's like spending time with nature. Another good one is, go out into a storm, experience a storm. It's uncomfortable.
Like I just
it's
did
not
this morning.
Yeah, like you did this morning, like there's something valuable in that we
It's
don't have
wonderful.
anymore. Well, we
Right.
don't have that anymore. We stay inside. Like, it's going to
Right.
be raining
Yeah.
here and windy, like 90-kilometer winds. Guess what? My Australian Shepherd dog is going to take me outside today in that
Yes.
storm, which is great, because one thing that nature teaches us: storms never last. Amazing. So hardship in life never lasts either, right? Now, where do we suffer when in a storm? When we are sitting in the storm and we say, I wish it was sunny, we suffer, right? Or when it's sunny and we dwell on how bad that storm was, it's like we're reliving that storm even though it's sunny, right? Like, that's how suffering, that's suffering. Suffering doesn't come from the storm itself. That's, again, comes back to these earlier concepts we were discussing: perspective. How shifting the relationship we have with our internal world, and thus how we perceive the world, the stories we tell about the world, like, that shifts, that ends the suffering.
It does. I mean, this storm that we just had for the last 24 hours, I think I was telling you, like 25 inches of snow, 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts. And I've taken 3 walks in the storm, and makes you feel alive. And it was amazing. And my dogs loved it. They loved it. I got to watch my dogs like bounding through piles of snow and smiling if they could smile. Like, it was wonderful. Yeah. One other thing that I wanted to touch on, and then I'll be done with you shortly. So I have this thing called the WHEALTHY life, which is wealth with a health in it. And really, what I'm trying to do is help people who feel dead inside get their fire back, feel more alive, because I just feel like people are low vibe, they're blocked, they're stuck, they're negative. Is that kind of the same person you're trying to reach?
In a way. Yeah.
Just maybe different ways?
Yeah, in a way. Absolutely. I think so many of us are in that perspective of, in this world, right? I think it's like when the clouds are like, everyone's worried about the chemtrails, constantly the chemtrails. And like, I know people who don't want to go outside because of it.
It's crazy.
And I'm like, but that's losing the battle.
Right. That's
when
fear.
You don't go outside. It's like, just because the chemtrails there doesn't mean the sun isn't behind them. And it doesn't mean that they're going to win either. Like, you look into Oregon, and like, there's some really interesting stuff going on with Oregon and being able to like do some cloud busting stuff. So if that really bothers you, like, look into that, because that's, again, looking for the solution rather than the despair. So yeah, I think a lot of people are stuck in just, again, that perspective. I think that is kind of what you're getting at too, right?
Yeah, for sure. And then if you were to tell people listening to this today 1 to 3 things they could do in the next week that would help bring them into a better state of coherence or close to a state of healing, what would that be?
My favorite and my biggest focus recently has been in the work of like our thought world. right? And the realization that no matter how real a thought feels or how convincing a thought is, it's merely just a thought. And so naturally, it's, we think about things that are in front of us. Like you and I are probably thinking about at some point in this conversation that we're having a conversation on, this recording platform. We're looking at our computer. And those are thoughts that may have some sort of significance or connection to the world. But if the thought were to cause suffering, like, oh, I could be doing so much other work and I'm got to record this podcast right now, you know, and the suffering comes from that thought, like it's just a thought. When we realize that it's just a thought and that it's the feeling is coming from the thought, that sort of minimizes the suffering that we start to experience, right? And it's like, well, I feel something in my body. It's like, okay, but the people who can walk on hot coals and sometimes don't even have burns on their feet, right? It seems like miraculous, right? How do they do that? It's because that relationship that they know that their thoughts aren't real, and it has implications in our physical body, right? I think this is really where you get to the crux of doing that inner work, is like fostering a better relationship with your inner world. Is our thoughts convince us that they're real or important and that we have to think about them, but then that disallows us from letting them go. There's just so many, if not most of our problems come from the thoughts getting in our own way. Like, I don't feel so well. And then we think, well, that means that I have to do something. My body must need something from me, and I need to go and take an antibiotic or take a this or take a that. I need to do something. We get in our own way. Right? Now, there's time and place for everything. There's time and place to do an intervention or a protocol as well, especially if we're coming from sort of the modern world. We might want a little bit of purification. I'm not denying that. But I think where so many of us find ourselves, and I'm kind of speaking to the people who've been doing this for a long time, who've been like healing for a long time, it's like at some point we just have to stop focusing on the healing, have faith in our body's ability to regulate itself. Like it will take us to the final destination. Like we just have to you can't reverse 20 or 40 years of toxicity and deficiency and despair in 6 months. Sometimes you're going to need a little bit of time. So get out of your own way, shift your focus on something that means more to you than just the disease, or even just the healing, because healing is just another word for you're still diseased.
Right.
Right? Align yourself with something bigger. What's your unique ability? What's your purpose, right? Like Dr. Dr. Harvey Bigelson, someone I look up to. I study from his sons, Adam and Josh Bigelson, and they're phenomenal. And I remember the sons telling the story about their father running a retreat down in Mexico, and people with cancer were coming, and people were healing from cancer, and so one lady at the end of the session asked Dr. Bigelson, so when do I come back? Like, when do I make sure that the cancer doesn't come back? He's like, no. He's like, you don't have to come back. Like, it's gone. Like, if you focus on it, it will come back, but it's gone. They were like, well, I'm a cancer patient. I need to come back. I need to come back for a checkup. And it's in that, again, we tie our identity to this that causes the problem. That's where the problem comes from, right? So we need to shift not just our physical habits, but our complete identity. That's the narrative shift. That's the perspective shift. So this is kind of the big three. And I think a lot of it comes back to the way we relate to our thoughts, because we think so many things constantly when like 99% of it is junk. And when you realize that the wisdom comes not from thinking about things, it comes from allowing good thoughts to come. Like, I haven't thought for a moment in this conversation here today, and I hope to have said something wise in some capacity.
Yeah.
But I'm not thinking about what I'm saying. Like, I'm just, I listen intently to what you're saying, and I'm not thinking about what you're saying. And then words come to me, right? Like, it's the middle, it's the in between. Like, music is not noise. It's knowing when to not make noise. That makes music beautiful. If it was just noise, it'd be unbearable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like those moments of silence in between. And so fostering that even in our day-to-day lives, again, that comes from not turning our thoughts off, but just building that better relationship with it. Right? So not forcing anything. That's the big focus of kind of how this all ties in.
I love that. Well, Liev, this has been very, very interesting conversation. I loved it. I could talk to you for hours, and I can listen to you for hours on your YouTube channel. So if people are looking to hear more about what you have to say, where is the best place for them to go?
Sure, YouTube is really great spot.
I love
It's
your
what I
YouTube.
I like long form content better. And so if you really like the YouTube, you can check out the Academy. I run Beyond Train Academy, where it's kind of just more in depth, but I really try to put out the best content that I possibly can for free. Like, I know everyone's in different situations, and if you can and you want to support me, my work, my family, you can join the Academy. But I really try to put out like the best work that I can on YouTube. And then I put more out in the Academy, and it's, you know, a little slower pace, and we have the live calls and discussion, and you know, it's more, we're trying to connect and work through some of these things on a deeper level, rather than just me giving you like point by point, you know, the conclusions and premises and the logic. And there's kind of more space and beauty in the Academy, I guess, in a way. But yeah, I have some group offerings, and of course, if you do feel compelled to do, you know, one-to-one education, that's available as well. It's all available on the website, Beyond Train.
Yeah, and we'll
So
link everything in the
everything's
show
under
notes.
Beyond
Yeah, and
Train. Everything's
honestly,
Beyond Train.
anyone listening to this, I would just start with his YouTube channel. Just
Yeah,
look
it's a
for a
great
title
starting
that
point.
calls to you, listen to it. It's really, really good, really good.
Yeah.
Like I've started binging it after I saw the first one, and then when you agreed to come on the podcast, and I really, really love what you have to say.
Amazing. I'm glad.
And again, I would say to everyone, I guess the thing I would tell everyone, if one thing you could take away from today is just go outside. Go outside. I don't care if it's snowing. I don't care if it's hot. Go outside. That's like a great step one to enter into this whole realm of healing. So with that being said, again, thank you so much for being on the show today. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to connecting again in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.